They say that wood has a memory, that the timber used to build a sanctuary doesn't just hold up a roof. It records every sigh, every laugh, and every unspoken grief of the people who lived within its grain. Scientists often point to the stone tape theory, the idea that minerals and structure can store emotional energy, replaying it like a ghostly film when the conditions are exactly right. But when you're 20 years old, lying in the dark of your late grandfather's cabin, you don't think about mineral compositions. You think about the silence, and you think about what's waiting for that silence to break. This is the story of a summer that felt heavier than most. My grandfather had passed only months before, leaving behind the cabin he'd built with his own hands, in a place where the stars felt like they were pressing against the windows. My mother and I had gone there to close things up, a final pilgrimage to a place that now smelled of dust and time rather than the old pipe tobacco and wood smoke that once defined it. We weren't alone. Our dog was with us, a usually fearless companion who lived for the scent of deer and pine. But the woods didn't just get dark that night, they became absolute. We had gone to bed in the same room, a necessity born from the drafts that still haunted the old structure. The dog was at the foot of the bed, head on his paws, but his ears were constantly twitching, tracking the invisible movements of the night. I was in that half-awake state where thoughts begin to turn into images, drifting into the lull of the woods, when the air in the room suddenly changed. It felt thick, as if the barometric pressure had dropped in a heartbeat, leaving a vacuum that made my skin prickle. Then the silence didn't just break, it was shattered. Knock, knock, knock. 3 loud, authoritative thuds against the exterior wall of the cabin, right where our heads were resting. They weren't the random pops of a house settling or the scritch of a branch. These were deliberate. They were spaced with a chilling, rhythmic precision, exactly 1 second apart. It sounded as if a man was standing just outside, or perhaps inside the very wood of the wall, using his knuckles to announce his presence. The sound didn't just vibrate in my ears. I felt it in my teeth. It was heavy, metallic, and utterly human. The dog didn't just bark. He erupted. He scrambled to his feet, his hackles raised in a jagged line down his spine, a low, guttural growl vibrating in his chest that I had never heard before. He wasn't looking at the door. He was staring directly at the spot on the wall where the knocks had resonated. His eyes were wide, showing the whites in a whale-eye expression of pure terror. He was sensing something we couldn't, an energy or a vibration that turned his instinct from guardian to prey. I looked at my mother. Even in the gloom, I could see the color had drained from her face. She was the one who always told me there was a logical explanation for everything, but as she sat up, her breath hitching in her throat, she didn't say a word. She was visibly rattled, her hands trembling as she reached for the dog. Her maternal shield, usually so solid, had cracked, and through that crack, the cold realization leaked in. Whatever was on the other side of that wall wasn't made of flesh and bone. To understand why 3 knocks are so uniquely terrifying, we have to look back at the folklore that has followed us for centuries. In Western demonology, 3 is a sacred triad, the Father, the Son, and the Holy Spirit. When a malevolent entity knocks 3 times, it is often interpreted as a mockery, a punchline to a joke told in the dark. It is a subversion of the divine, a rhythmic insult to the Trinity, and when those knocks happen in the dead of night, it is a signal that the barrier between our world and the abyss has grown thin. But there is a softer, though no less chilling, tradition. In Irish and Appalachian folklore, unexplained knocking is known as a forerunner, an omen that precedes a significant transition. The 3 knocks of death are believed to be a warning from the spirit world that a loved one has passed or is about to. Legend speaks of the banshee, who doesn't always wail. Sometimes she simply knocks 3 times to signal the end of a lineage or the final checking in of a patriarch. Was this my grandfather's final farewell, a residual echo of a man who always knocked before entering a room, replaying for his daughter and granddaughter one last time? From a scientific perspective, skeptics point to the architecture of fear. Log cabins are living materials, highly responsive to environmental shifts. Nighttime temperature drops cause the wood fibers and metal fasteners to contract. This process involves the buildup of static friction, tension increasing until it's overcome, resulting in a sudden or sharp release of kinetic energy known as stick-slip motion. This can manifest as a loud, rhythmic thud. Furthermore, older plumbing systems are prone to water hammer or hydraulic shock, where pressure pulses reflect off closed valves, shaking the pipes against the wooden wall studs. But these explanations often fail to account for the biological reactions of animals. Dogs are essentially biological anomaly sensors. They possess an auditory range that far exceeds our own, detecting frequencies as high as 65,000 hertz. More importantly, they are sensitive to infrasound, low-frequency vibrations below 20 hertz. Infrasound is known to cause feelings of unease, dread, and the creeps in both humans and animals. While we might not hear the vibration, we feel its physiological effects: nausea, a racing heart, and unexplained anxiety. The dog, however, can hear these vibrations through its paws and whiskers. When our dog stared at that wall, he wasn't just reacting to a sound. He was tracking a presence that occupied a frequency we are no longer tuned to. He was also picking up on our own emotional contagion. Dogs have nearly 300 million olfactory receptors and can smell human emotions by detecting chemosignals like cortisol and adrenaline. When the knocks happened, our sudden spike in stress hormones became a chemical beacon for the dog. He mirrored our fear, creating a terrifying feedback loop. We heard a noise. Our fear triggered the dog's protective instincts, and his panic reinforced our belief that an invisible threat was in the room with us. Psychologists might call this a psychological contagion event. In isolated, high-emotion settings like a late relative's property, perceptions and emotions are transferred and amplified between group members. This is often linked to the feeling of presence, a recognized neurological phenomenon where the brain, deprived of clear sensory input in the dark, relies on imaginative suggestibility to fill the gaps. If we already believed the cabin was haunted by my grandfather, our brains would naturally interpret acoustic anomalies as intelligent knocks, but the emotional reality of that night cannot be so easily dismissed. There is a concept known as ghosts in the nursery, the idea that unhealed family traumas or deep emotional attachments can haunt the relationships of subsequent generations. In a literal sense, the ghost in the cabin may have been the manifestation of my mother's unresolved grief. The mother's attempt to stay calm while being visibly rattled sent conflicting signals to both me and the dog, heightening the sense that a malevolent presence had broken through her usual protective barrier. We didn't sleep for the rest of that night. We sat in the glow of a single flashlight, listening to the woods. Every creak of the floorboards felt like a footstep. Every sigh of the wind felt like a whisper. The 3 knocks never returned, but they didn't have to. The message had been delivered. The ghost in the nursery had made itself known, tapping on the wall of our reality to remind us that we were guests in a house that no longer belonged to the living. When morning finally broke, the cabin looked different. The sunlight didn't feel warm. It felt thin, like a veil stretched too far. The dust motes dancing in the light didn't look like dust. They looked like the remnants of a spirit that had dissolved with the dawn. We packed the car in silence. As I took one last look at the cabin wall, I noticed something I hadn't seen before. There were no branches near that side of the house. No pipes ran through that specific section of the wall. There was nothing but solid cedar and the deep dark woods beyond. As we drove away, the dog finally relaxed, curling up in the back seat and falling into a deep, exhausted sleep, but my mother and I kept looking back. We knew that whatever had knocked on that wall wasn't done with the cabin. It was a part of it now, a silent watchman in the grain of the wood, waiting for the next person to come seeking silence, only to find that in the deep woods, the silence is never truly empty. Sometimes when the house is quiet and the night is long, I still hear it in my mind, the rhythm, the weight of it. 1, 2, 3, and I realize that some doors don't need hinges to be opened. Some visitors don't need a key. They just need you to listen. And once you've heard the 3 knocks, you can never truly close your ears to the dark again, because the 3 knocks aren't just a sound, they're a question. And once they've been asked, the only thing left to do is wait for the answer. This case highlights the profound intersection between what we can measure and what we can only feel in the dark, whether it was the linear thermal expansion of timber or an intelligent haunting. The psychological impact remains a permanent fixture in our lives. The cabin stands as a testament to the fact that our most visceral fears are often those that bridge the gap between science and the supernatural, the moments when the logical world fails to explain the terror reflected in a mother's eyes or the raised hackles of a loyal dog. We left the cabin that day, but the 3 knocks stayed behind, a rhythmic memory stored forever in the cedar.